What's up guys, Dylan here from Veteran Aquatics, and today we are going to talk about how to make a profit from your fish room. Before we go ahead and get started, I want to bring a couple of things to your attention. Number one, we finally launched our membership program here at Veteran Aquatics. So if you click the little join button, there are 3 tiers at which you can join and help support me as a channel, and you'll get content for that. Be it live streams, behind the scenes videos, one-on-one help from me personally with your fish tanks or your fish room. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You guys have been killing it lately. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So first, let's go ahead and talk about what exactly a for-profit fish room is for and what it means. So we all know this hobby is expensive, we all know how much tanks and fish and stuff like that costs, but how can we either offset those costs or even better yet turn a profit while still maintaining our hobby? And that's more what we're going to talk about today, is how I make money back and turn a profit in a hobby that, generally speaking, is not very cost effective, and the returns on things that you're trying to sell secondhand aren't very good. So the first thing I want to talk about, obviously, are the fish. Now, there are a couple ways to make money with the fish, and the first and most obvious, which everyone always talks about, is breeding for profit. So you have fish, they make more fish, you in turn sell the fish that they made and make some money back. So there's a couple of things with that. So number one, when you're looking at buying a pair of fish, make sure the amount that you're spending is less than or equal to what you feel that you will make back on their first spawn. So for example, if you buy a pair of apistos and they're young, and let's say, apistos don't have huge spawns to start with, let's say maybe they make 8 baby apistos that make it, right? So you have 10, 8 make it, so you have 8 apistos to sell. Let's say you spent $60 on the pair. So now, even if you sell them for $10 each, you then turn a $20 profit, assuming you spend $60 on the pair. That is a good buy. However, let's turn to something like red devils. Let's say you spend $150 on a pair of really nice red devils. What you're gonna find is it's really hard to get rid of large, aggressive fish, let alone at anything close to what you pay retail. So you paid $150 for the pair, they have 1,000 babies, 500 make it, you're able to sell 100 at $1 a piece, and then you're still sitting there with 400 red devil fry because nobody wants red devils because they get enormous and will just murder things. So these are things that are really important to take into consideration. A very commonly used fish, or I'll give you a list of commonly used fish that are good for breeding for profit. Number one, guppies. Everybody can house them, a lot of people keep them, they're not hard to keep, they don't have any crazy tank or water requirements. So guppies are generally a good way to go. That said, I wouldn't recommend going out and spending $100 on some super crazy strain, a pair of super crazy guppies, and then expecting to get $100 a pair in return, because you won't. 90% of fish keepers are not super specialty fish keepers, and they just want something that's colorful and nice. So my recommendation, if you want to go for guppies, is something like mutt guppies. And if you go over to michaelsfishroom.com, he sells some very nice mutt guppies, and that can go ahead and get you started. The next thing that I might recommend breeding for profit are going to be bristlenose plecos. Now they come in different varieties: calico, albino longfin, and you have your regular brown bristlenose plecos. They're all good because everybody wants plecos, but nobody wants huge common ones. So bristlenose plecos are a really commonly used, commonly traded, commonly sold fish that are fairly easy to take care of on spawn and can make you some money back in your fish room. Now, apart from those, which are 2 very staple fish, my other recommendations would be something like apistos, because they're dwarf cichlids. So something small, you have to consider how many people can house this fish that you're trying to sell them, right? So the smaller it is, the easier it is for them to house it. Depending on your area and your skill level, rams could be a good one. German blue rams, or Bolivian rams, or electric blue rams, or if you can get a hold of them, black rams. and even possibly angelfish. But angelfish seem to be extremely area dependent, and unless you're shipping, which I wouldn't recommend for somebody that's just starting out trying to breed for profit or turn a profit in their fish room, it's going to be really hard to get rid of them. They have a lot of babies. It's very time consuming to care for the eggs and the fry, and it's not always worth it. For me, I just happen to love angelfish, and I have quite a few adult pairs in this tank behind me, as well as a few others. And I will be breeding them because I know I can turn some of them, at least in my local clubs. So those would be my initial recommendations for somebody that wants to breed for profit. So guppies, plecos, apistos, rams. Again, bear in mind the size of the fish that you're breeding, and that'll determine how easy it is for you to get rid of. African cichlids is a good one if you're comfortable with Africans and understand the requirements and how to either strip them or let them hold, but we won't get into that in this video. And then the other way to make money from the fish themselves is by flipping fish from auction. So I go to every auction and swap meet that I can. I always look for a good deal. I will buy things every single time if I think it's a good deal, and sometimes I will turn around and flip those fish. Let's say I pay $3 for 6 fish at the Cichlid Club of York auction. I can then take those same fish somewhere else and sell them for maybe $5 a fish. So I spent $3, I made $30, so my profit is $27. And that only works for me because I travel around to the clubs that are fairly close to me, and I can kind of move fish between clubs. So if I bought those fish for $3 at auction at York, I would not next auction try to sell those fish for more money at the same auction, because they're not going to go. But if I took those fish from York and took them to Lehigh Valley, or took them to Lancaster, or took them to Philly, I might be able to turn a nice profit on them, because what people are breeding in York isn't necessarily what people are breeding over in the Lehigh Valley or in Philly. Alright, so bear that in mind as well. It's a great way to do it, but you have to understand what a fish would generally cost at a store, what it's costing you at the auction or swap meet, how long you're going to hold it, and what it's going to go for when you try to turn it. For example, I bought a Bisher, and I got what I thought was a really good deal on it. I am now going to sell that fish at a profit, just because it's going to a different area, and I got a really good deal on it in the first place. Now, if I had to spend $80 on that Bisher, I would never flip it for a profit, because nobody's going to pay $90 for a Bisher, you know what I mean? And bear in mind too, your profit margins might not be large. You might hold on to that fish for a month, 2 months, and sell it for a $10 profit. As long as it's not costing you more, like significantly more to feed or house it, then it's not a problem, and you can do that. Because small amounts of money added up equal larger amounts of money. It's all about the long game. Don't try to make $100 on every fish deal that you do, because it's not going to work. So that's kind of how I would make money from the fish themselves. The next thing you can do is try to make money from the equipment. So we all know buying a new tank, using it for a couple of years, and trying to sell that same tank around even close to the same price you paid never works, and almost nobody will pay for it. Right? Nobody wants to spend what it costs for a new tank on a used tank, because they'll just go buy the new tank. And with the Petco dollar per gallon sale, that makes it harder as well. Because you know, you can get a 20-gallon hive for $20 or a 10-gallon tank for $10. That doesn't apply to things like 20 longs and 40 breeders, which are harder to come by. So making money with the equipment is actually not that hard. One, I get a lot of free fish tanks. I offer to pick up and remove fish tanks and fish for local people at no cost. So I go to their house, I take down their setup, I bag the fish up, I take the fish with me, I take the tank and all of the equipment that they had with me. Now that might sound like ridiculous, like who would do that? You would be amazed how many people have a fish tank that they don't want to take care of anymore, and they feel a little guilty about it and want it to go to a good home. Because of that, almost every angelfish in that tank was a rehome that I didn't pay for. A lot of the fish in my fish room are rehomes that I did not pay for, but I took them in, and sometimes they come with a tank and a filter and a heater. Now, you can't get $20 for a 10-gallon tank because somebody can buy it for $10 brand new, but what you can do is sell an entire setup. So I get these tanks, I have excess heaters, I have excess filters. We all know I run mostly sponge filters, but I have a bunch of hang-on bags. So what I'll do is I'll create a setup. I'll put a lid, if I have one, a light, I'll put a filter and a heater together in a tank and sell it as a setup at a very reasonable price. Now, odds are I have paid little, if anything at all, for all of this stuff. But what I will do is give somebody else a good deal on this stuff. They're happy, they got a good deal, and they got a whole tank set up. I'm happy because I made money off the equipment. So I did make a video about how to get free fish tanks, and I will link that for you down below so you can go ahead and take a look at it if you want to. It's a very good video. I've done very well with it. Regardless of a few criticisms I had of it, it works very well, and I actually had to take the listings and the posts down because I had too many people reaching out to me. I couldn't keep up, I was forgetting people, and it just got to a point where I had enough tanks and I didn't really want any more unless they were something very specific. So you can check that out if you want to know how to get free tanks. Again, sometimes they come with fish and equipment. Like I got a Fluval 307 with one of the tanks that I got a pair of Angels off of. Stands, lights, filters, everything. The first submersible pump I got was from a rehome of some fish and their tank. So go ahead and try that. But again, don't think you're gonna sell, I don't know, a 20-gallon setup for $100. They might sell it for $80 at the store, like if you go to Walmart and get one of those Top Fin starter kits, but you are going to turn around and sell it on Marketplace or Craigslist for, let's say, $45, right? That's a fairly reasonable price, maybe $50 depending on your area. And again, it depends on your area. Check your local area, see what these fish tanks or these setups are going for, and try to beat it just by a little. You don't have to beat it by 20, $30, but you do have to beat it a little bit, otherwise they're just going to go with the other person. Right, so those are two of the ways that I bring income in via my fish room, is selling fish, selling and flipping fish, and selling and flipping equipment that I no longer need. I'll never sell anything that I want to breed. I'll never sell a tank that I'm going to use. All that stuff plays in part of it. And so the last part we're going to talk about is overhead. So your overhead is what it costs you to run your fish room, house your fish, feed your fish, all that stuff goes into overhead. So first, you have to look at what it costs you to build the fish room. I have far and away spent more money building this fish room than I have made from it so far. But once it's completely done and built, I'm no longer spending money on building and expanding the fish room. I now have most of the tanks that I need, so I shouldn't have to buy any more, and I can just slowly accumulate them when I find that one phenomenal deal every second month on Marketplace or Craigslist. So overhead, what does it cost you to heat? What does it cost you for the tanks? What does it cost you to feed? What does it cost you in electricity? I have a well, so I don't pay for water, but what does it cost you in water, doing water changes? Right, these are all things that you need to take into consideration. So things you can do to save money, or at least things that I do to save money. One, I've built every single stand in this fish room. I built all of them. I've made videos on how to build stands in the past. I will link that down below for you as well, so you can check that out. So you can save on the overhead. Next, heating. Heaters take a lot of electricity. They'll jack your electricity bill up, and you'll be paying a lot of money for electric. I heat the room. It's more cost effective, and it saves me a lot of money because I could not put a heater in every single one of these tanks and expect to ever make money off of it because I would be spending so much in electricity. All right, next is filtration. I run, I have 3 air pumps running right now instead of the dozen or so that I had because I finally hooked up my diaphragm pump. I'm running 3 air pumps, and it's running this whole fish room. On one of the 125s, I do have a canister filter. On a couple of the tanks, like this 90-gallon angelfish tank, I do have a hang-on back filter, just because it's so deep and it is pretty packed in there. I mean, there's a sponge filter in there as well, but there is a Marineland 400 in there just to suck up the stuff from the bottom. I just don't feel comfortable just filtering this tank with a sponge filter, and sometimes that happens. But sponge filters and air pumps are generally your way to go. Check out Gemco if you have an entire fish room. You have to call them, you can't order it online, but you call them, explain your setup, and they will recommend a pump. They will send you the air valves. They'll even send you the drill bits for it. All you have to do is buy the PVC and set everything up. All right, so there's filtration. Food. What are you feeding? It's usually better to buy in bulk, but that depends on how much food you go through. If you have 3 fish tanks and you buy a huge tub of Northfin Krill Flake, that's going to go bad before you ever get halfway through it. So bear in mind the amount of tanks you have versus the amount of food that you're buying. If you're like me and have 30 plus tanks, it makes sense to buy bulk food because I'm going through a lot of food every single day when I feed the fish room. Again, electricity that goes in pretty much into heating and filtration are tied into that, but also your lighting. So I have very few tanks that have plants in them, So as far as running like better lights, I don't have to do it, and I can run shop lights from Walmart are what most of these tanks are lit off of. Some of them have old fluorescent bulbs. I do have one night crew light going over the Planet tanks that I have, but elsewise they're $17 at Walmart, and they're 4 feet long, super bright, work great on a big tank, no problems there. Bear that in mind as well. Right? So these are all things to keep in mind, right? So it's where can you make money on the fish, where can you make money on the equipment, and where are you spending money the most? So you have to buy stock to breed stock to sell stock or to flip it. So my favorite place to buy fish are from auctions. I absolutely love auctions. You almost always get a good deal on the fish. Another great place is your local aquarium club, and I've put a link in the past to Aquarium Co-op's Club Finder. I'll put another one down here, so now you have how to get free fish tanks, how to build stands, and how to find your local aquarium club in the description. So make sure you check that out if you're interested in breeding for profit. The clubs are great. Sometimes they have a band group, so you'll find fish on there that people are selling or rehoming, generally at a good price. But bear in mind, if it's coming from your local club, and you're going to try to sell it to your local club, it might not work out that great. So for anybody that doesn't know, I was actually a business major in college. So this kind of stuff is right up my alley. It's what I enjoy doing, and it's what I want to do and be successful at doing it. Right? So those are just some of the tips that I have for you for breeding for profit. All right, like I said, smaller fish generally better. Bear in mind all the costs that are associated with it, your water bill, your electric, your food, etc. Bear in mind the amount of space you have. If you have a 10 foot by 10 foot room, you're not going to fill it with 125s. You're probably going to fill it with 20-gallon talls or 10-gallon tanks, right? So bear all that stuff in mind, and in the future I'll make a video on how to determine how to build your fish room, right? But that's for another time, because that's going to take me a long time to go through, and this video is already long enough. But that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you found most helpful, or if you have any additional tips to give to folks that are watching this, leave them in the comments down below. That's it, guys. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And again, make sure you check out the membership options that you have. If anybody wants to support me, I'd sincerely appreciate that. That's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.